Okay, so I'm trying to track this here. Where you've got people playing both sides of the game here. Let me start with you, Mike. Have you seen anything like this before? The prosecution is effectively cross-examining a witness who he had relied on in his case in chief, and it looked like he got a little mad there at one point.
It looks like he's very frustrated. She looked actually more credible the more frustrated he looked because she didn't get to an argument with him. She said, "You just accused me of something that's not true." I don't know how that plays in a jury. I'm really surprised.
Yeah, Anna, I mean, unless they forgot that this woman spent hours on the stand for the prosecution, they got to be scratching their heads too, thinking, well, does the prosecution believe her? Do they don't believe her? What's going on here?
I mean, I thought that was a terrible look for the prosecution. It made him look really invested in his results and made him look like when he hears one thing he doesn't like, he wants to toss it out the window. He called her as his expert. He asked the jury to believe her because he was calling her as a credible expert. And now when she can't reach a conclusion or disagrees with him, I thought it was very unprofessional.
Yeah, well, that might have been part of the defense tactic. Who knows? Hey, we have a moment here. Let me introduce our additional guest this hour. It is Dr. Kelly Cruz. You may recognize her. She's a medical examiner, and I can always think of Kelly Cruz Corn Rake. That's how I kind of associate what's going on with her and what she's doing. Kelly, thank you for joining. Appreciate having you this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, a quick question before we go back into court. Have you ever been in the position as a prosecution witness, the ME in a given case, then being called by the defense?
It's definitely a possibility to be called by the defense. We consider ourselves, non-partial to either side. I personally have not been called by the defense in any of my cases thus far.
Well, hang in there. It'll happen, I'm sure. Let's go back into court. I think the defense better pay her because I think she's done some damage to the prosecution's case. So that's it for this DNA expert. We don't know if there will be any more. Let me ask Dr. Kelly Cruz. There was a discussion going on there, Kelly, that had to do with CODIS and the logging of DNA information and what sounded like some irregularity where it wasn't done properly, which might have prevented prosecution and defense from learning about a particular witness, and I think it was related to Mr. Quinones. And then she personally, Joelle in there, took it upon herself to fix the error. Your experience with those kind of governmental agencies and problems and mistakes, and have you had to clear them up? Have you seen them impact cases you've worked on?
I had an instance like this. It seems like
it seems pretty rare. Yeah, it seems pretty unusual.
It sounds very unique, and really the SOPs or standard operating procedures really are guidelines that everybody has in their office. You need to follow those step by step, and if you don't, there can be some serious repercussions. So something to look at really closely in these cases. A case can get dismissed on a technicality, which really undermines all the work that everybody else put into it.
Yeah, and Anna, it seems that moment in the courtroom could have been ugly. I mean, it just seemed like it could have been confrontational, but it turned out the defense kind of patted her on the back for doing the right thing, and it may help the defense case.
I think in the final analysis, Joellen Brown was an excellent witness for the defense.
And what about you, Mike? What do you think about that unusual moment?
I think that was a great moment for the defense. I think it was horrific for the prosecution. I think it really is going to, this prosecutor with 3 questions may have ruined all the credibility he built up prior to this over days, because this was just not the witness to do that to. She seemed very forthright. She had that kind of very academic, easy explanation. Like you really understood about DNA when she spoke about it. And then you're like, basically the prosecutor said, you got fired because you thought somebody else may have had something to do with this.
That was such a personal attack, really. It was
bad.
Odd. Okay, we're going to get back into the courtroom. Looks like a new witness is about to take the stand there, and I don't know if it's DNA or not. Let's find out. So we have a new witness about to take the stand there. I caught some of the name, Greg something, and we're going to find out in just a couple of moments. But we heard from another DNA expert that we heard from earlier today, Kevin Noppinger, and I'm going to leave it to you, Anna, to explain to me why he was brought back within such a short period of time, but what was the focus here?
I'm not really sure. I'm guessing that he was called again by the defense to continue to build up Joellen Brown's testimony because he agreed with her conclusions. I thought the prosecution lost points here by trying to go over again and again this phrase that Mr. Segura is not excluded. But of course, that doesn't actually move the ball either way.
Am I excluded from that sample?
It depends what the sample looks like. It could be that you couldn't be excluded or included.
Mike, it seems to me that maybe sometimes you get too deep into the weeds in a case as the attorney, and maybe if you took a step back, you might not go into this kind of back and forth detail.
I think what he was trying, I was interpreting what they were trying to do, and I think they failed, was show that the guidelines made them show alternative suspects, and the prosecution in its presentation of the case was ignoring that. I just think they did it in a very awkward way, because he kept asking about the accreditation of the lab. You'd lose your accreditation, and when you post that with the prosecutor yelling at the expert before then that you should have never done that when she should have, and you got fired over it, which wasn't true, really makes it look bad. But I think you got to get enough of like 11s and 17s unless you're going to the track.
Enough alleles? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move on from alleles to footprints and other impressions. This is a witness who's going to tell us all about that. That's his expertise. Interesting here. A lot of impressions of something in and around the house. And of course, the defense wants you to believe that there were a lot of bodies involved in these heinous, gruesome crimes. So let me ask Dr. Kelly Cruz, who's here. And I mentioned she was with the corn rake case before. More officially, of course, that was the Todd Mullis case out of Iowa, which resulted in a murder conviction for Todd Mullis, but a grisly and unusual case. Kelly, let me ask you, in this case, 3 young children found in water in a bathtub. Ultimately, 2 apparently were drowned. 1 was shot. I mean, how do you sort through when we come upon a crime scene like that, or you get the after effects of that? How do you begin the process to sort through this, and how does that water affect your ability to tell what the cause and manner of death was?
Great question, especially in cases of drowning. So ultimately, drowning is a diagnosis of exclusion. I have to look at every other possibility for why that person died. If I don't see another reason, and they are in a body of water, potentially were in a body of water, I will ultimately say they drowned. Also, when someone is in water, it actually accelerates the decomposition process. So somebody's in a body of water and taken out, they might look more decomposed or like they've been dead for a lot longer than they actually have, just because of the presence of that water. So it does make things really, really difficult for us, and we just have to take things step by step, document all of our findings, and see what we come out with in the end.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You would think if they were in water and then removed, they would look less dehydrated over time. So thank you, doctor. We'll get back to this case, some of the details of the crimes as the defense continues to put on their case, winding down as we understand it. We're going to take a quick break, though, and come right back. This is the Law and Crime Network.